Things MSP Live. Tonight we're going to have a great show. We're going to be talking cybersecurity with Wayne Selk, and specifically, I'm going to be pulling things out of the State of Cybersecurity Report from CompTIA, the latest one. And so it should be a really interesting show. But of course, I always start with a drink in my hand, and we need to make sure that all the live streams are working on all the different places. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so on YouTube, we are live. Let me go ahead and comment. Sorry for the clickety clack in your ears there. All right, good evening, YouTube. And we have Henry Tim in the house already. Nice to see you, sir. Let me go ahead and check LinkedIn. We are live on LinkedIn. So let me go ahead and get that commented. Good evening, LinkedIn. Boom, that one is working. It's great when this stuff works. Technology. All right, and Facebook appears to be working as well. Let's just make sure the chat's working. All right, looks like we are working on all three platforms. This is getting easier every time. I'm just going to start throwing some pre-roll up here and let you guys watch it while, I'm checking these things, because this is probably getting boring for you guys at this point. But yeah, so we got, some great people in the house already. Henry Tim is here. We got Craig Willard with MSP After Hours. If you have not checked out his podcast, please do so. And of course, we have Degly Mendez in the house as well. And we've got a whole 2.5 minutes left. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of other things while we're, just sitting here chit-chatting. Tonight's beverage of choice is an old-fashioned made with Forester 1910, I believe it is, just for reference, if anybody cares. Speaking of caring, if you care about all things MSP, you can head on over to atmsp.threadless.com, and you can pick yourself up a hoodie, a sweatshirt, a t-shirt, all of the different things. We have men's, women's, we even have accessories. We have things like puzzles. So if you want to get yourself an all things MSP puzzle just to show your support, please do. Other than that, let's see. We do have a couple of vendor partners who have signed on. We actually have quite a few at this point. We have, I think, 8 who have signed up, still waiting to get their logos and stuff. So we have movebot.io as a new vendor partner. And we also have Channel Program. I will actually be co-hosting Channel Program Engage next month. So there'll be more information coming on that and how to get connected and join that. I don't remember what the date is, but I will certainly let you know as it's coming up. Oh, and I didn't mean to restart that timer. Let's see, where are we at? We're at 6:59, so we're pretty close at this point. So we're going to be talking about cybersecurity tonight with Wayne Selk from CompTIA. We're going to be just kind of chit-chatting about some of the things in the State of Cybersecurity Report, the most recent one from CompTIA. So if you guys want to ask some questions about that report, go ahead, find it. I don't have the link to share with you at the moment because I already had the PDF downloaded, but go check it out. If you have any questions, this would be the time to ask those questions. All right, it's straight up 7 o'clock. I don't care what the timer says. Let's get this thing started. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another All Things MSP Live. Really do appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the guests that come on the show. We had Craig Willard last week from MSP After Hours, so make sure you go check out his podcast. That was a great conversation as well. So check out the reruns. Of course, you'll find them. They're still on LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, YouTube is probably the best place to go find those at this point. And speaking of which, if you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and give this video a like, a subscribe, and ring that bell to make sure you get notified when we post new ones and when we schedule the next live stream. All right. I don't think I'm going to, I went through, some of the other stuff pre-show, and I don't think I need to go through that anymore. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So Wayne Selk is my guest tonight. Wayne is the VP of Cybersecurity Programs and the Executive Director for CompTIA ISAL. He's a co-author, contributor, and past facilitator for a whole bunch of different things over at ConnectWise. Wayne uses his more than 25 years of experience in leadership in planning, managing, and delivering information around security deployments to help CompTIA members secure their own and their customers' sensitive business critical data. He joined CompTIA in March of 22. Previously, he was at ConnectWise, where he joined them in 2018 through the acquisition of the Sienna Group. They were a security solutions provider where he was the principal consultant who focused on data classification, FISMA compliance, and managed security services. Wayne has held a whole bunch of certifications, a lot of acronyms that I'm not going to go into. He currently resides in the Tampa Bay area. Welcome, will you please, Wayne Selk.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Eric. Good to be on.
Good to have you. I think this is, it's great. Oh, we have Uncle Marv in the house. So I every time Uncle Marv comes in and says holla, I got to say, make sure that after the live stream tonight for All Things MSP, that you join Uncle Marv for his live stream podcast afterwards. So, because his starts at 8, just for reference. Okay. We got a whole bunch of other people. Fabian, Chris, lots of people coming in tonight. This is great. Love to see a lot of participation in the live streams. So, Wayne, give me a little bit of background on the State of Cybersecurity Report and what the purpose of it is for MSPs.
Oh, that's actually a really good question. And so from my take on it, right? Because I have a little bit of a different spin from the research department that actually pulls that together, right? So the first thing I want everybody to notice is that the State of Cybersecurity Report is broken into 4 areas, 4 very distinct areas. They use policy, people, process, and product. Now, for those, and I know I see a lot of familiar names out here, for those of you that know me, I like using the 3 pillars of cybersecurity: people, process, and technology, right? I like keeping things simple. The reason the research department actually breaks that out is because they can actually bundle things a little bit differently and focus on those 4 key areas. They all still fit into the 3 pillars of cybersecurity, which is awesome. It's just that they're able to focus a little bit more granular into some of those areas. So a couple of highlights from the report. The first thing your audience needs to know is that these, the respondents, because this is actually a survey that goes out around the world, not just to the member community, but it actually goes out to small, medium businesses, which I think we look at 250 employees or less. And I think here in the US, we look at 500 and less. Made up of very specific regional businesses. And the interesting thing about the report, and Eric, I don't know if you're going to end up showing it, but for those of you that need it, you can go out to connect.comptia.org. You don't have to be a member. You can just go straight to the resources link at the top, click on cybersecurity, and the State of Cybersecurity Report will be right there if you want to look at this. So there was a couple of interesting factoids that popped out of the report. Obviously, protecting privacy and protecting critical assets were the 2 largest areas of focus that all the respondents across the 6 regions said were their highest priorities. But interestingly enough, not that far behind was minimizing disruption, maintaining compliance, and mitigating risk. So again, I know Degley. I'm going to call Degley out. I know Henry, right? So I know those two individuals have actually heard me speak at some of the events. And one of my primary topics is mitigating risk for the MSP and the client and those business disruption type of scenarios. So it's kind of interesting how they're like right on the heels of that, protecting data um, and protecting those critical assets. But I will tell you, you can't protect either of those two things without first understanding the risk to your business.
Yeah, and that's important because risk is really what we're talking about, right? Um, it's cyber is just another attack, another risk to your business. And the problem for MSPs is that we're a funnel point, right? We're a place where if we get attacked, somebody gets, access to a lot of different enterprises. And so that makes us a very valuable target to the bad guys.
Oh, for sure. And that was seen July 2nd, 2021, right? The impact that security incident had on the industry actually was the catalyst for a lot of different things taking place inside of the industry follow on. So even the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency recognized that as a catalyst to create a core planning team around remote monitoring and management. And how do we deal with that tool specifically and the impact that it could have and does have on critical national infrastructure just here in the US?
Right. So, yeah, because I remember they released a whole document about MSPs and RMM tools and things like that for MSPs to use as a reference point in figuring these things out.
Well, we started what was released was a strategy guide and a strategic planning guide around how CISA was going to work with industry, including some of the MSPs that are on here, to better protect and figure out how to better secure not only RMM, but also the remote access servers, right?
Yeah, because remote access is really where they get access to everything. The RMM tool is one thing, and yes, they could probably run some scripts, but it depends on how well those scripts run, and there's a lot of other stuff to breach that. With remote access, they're just in. They have
Well,
complete
that's true.
access, and if they're doing it as an MSP, they're almost guaranteed to have admin level access, which means they've got the keys to the kingdom.
Agreed. Completely agree. And that's really one of the biggest challenges I think for a lot of businesses today. Forget about it's not just the MSP space, right? Because the MSPs are also dealing with clients who don't want to give up privileged access. And I mean, it's not just the small business, right? I don't know, MGM Resorts International and that whole attack, that whole social engineering attack, the thing I think that gets overlooked the most is that the CEO had privileged access. What?
Yeah.
I'm like, how? Okay, it's great that you were able to social engineer the CEO's account. I get that, right? The help desk guy, okay, they took Okta down, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that they were able to get into the back end systems through the CEO's account, allegedly, what I mean, like today in a highly regulated industry like gambling, the CEO has privileged access attached to his everyday account. Really? What?
Well, and I
Why are we
think
still
that's
talking about this?
yeah, that's a really interesting point because, yes, that example is the CEO of a large company, very high profile. But if you
Red
think about it, very nice. Um, if you think about it, even the small business owner is the highest profile person in a small business. And therefore, if a malicious actor is going to specifically target a business, the first person they're going to go after is the highest profile person in the business. So those types of users should be the ones who have least privilege access, to do, just enough to do their jobs so that when they are attacked, there's less of a footprint to be breached.
Oh, for sure. More importantly, those, regardless of the position, the folks with the privileged access should probably have the most comprehensive set of security controls applied to that individual, to that position, right? Because it's not necessarily just the individual
Right.
itself,
It's a
right? It's
role.
the position, right? It's the role that they hold. But I'd be curious to know from your audience how many have actually identified risk and responsibilities associated with the various roles, not individuals, inside of the organization. And then what are the controls that are needed in order to best protect that role?
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't know that I've really heard it put that way before in terms of the things that I should be documenting, right? As part of my cybersecurity plan.
Yeah, it's actually, and I know this is going to be a four-letter word for folks that are on, um, but policies, right? Governance, it all falls underneath that realm. Um, you know, to make sure that we have those things properly implemented within our organization, so we know those guardrails.
Yeah. All right. So I did promise that this would be about the State of Cybersecurity Report.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. I think that was a great introduction as to why the State of Cybersecurity Report is important. And as we go through, maybe we can also point out some ways that MSPs can use this report to evaluate what they're doing and maybe brainstorm and bring some new ideas to the table with their
Yeah,
clients.
for
So,
sure.
really quick, I'm going to go ahead and switch us to two people and a screen share.
Woohoo!
So this is one of the very first data charts in the report, and it basically is talking about the cybersecurity concerns that these businesses have. And it's interesting to me that one of the top one is the growing number of hackers and cyber criminals. Is that really a thing? I mean, is that response appropriate with what's actually happening out in the environment?
You, well, it is for at least the 511 respondents here in the U.S., right, which is the source of the information right there
Right.
below. The interesting thing to me, and again, I have a different perspective than how research kind of looks at this, but the fact that they're focusing on the growing number of hackers rather than the ones that currently exist tells me that many of the respondents here are not understanding their overall business risk associated with cybersecurity, right? Because it only takes one hacker to have a really bad day.
Yep.
The fact that they're going to grow to two only doubles your chances. Three, etc. Right? So the fact that you have one individual that's going to at least attempt to come at your organization should be enough for you to put the things in place that you need. Why does
Right.
it have to be two or more? Why do we care about the growing number?
Well, I think probably if I look at this from my point of view, it's because they believe that their risk is going up because there's a greater chance because of the growing number of hackers and cyber criminals. I think it's probably already reached critical mass
Mm-hmm.
to the point where that no longer matters. You're a target and there's enough of them out there for you to already be worried about it now. I almost look at this and I'm kind of worried that the fact that they look at it as a growing number means that they may actually use that as an excuse to push things off because it hasn't hit critical mass yet, whereas I think it probably has.
Yeah, and I guess that was my point. Thank you for regurgitating in your own words, right? The fact that I guess they're missing the boat still with the fact that it says growing number, as opposed to the last one that's in this list, which is the breadth of cybersecurity skills needed for my organization. I mean, why would you not look at your people to help solve for that top number?
Yeah. It's kind of a cart horse situation.
It is, right? And the answer to Henry's question is no. These are all small, medium businesses here in the U.S. They're not all MSPs. They're not all solution providers. There's a lot of other individuals that are caught up in this number, Henry.
And then we also have Degley commented, we're working on changing C's and top level management's mindset about wanting to have full access to everything, kind of speaking to the previous conversation that we were having as well.
Yeah, which is excellent, right? Because, again, does the CEO of an organization, we actually got into this conversation at a conference in Nashville a couple of days ago. Does the top individual in the organization really need privileged access? Because in most cases, there's a receptionist or a secretary or an admin who has those same credentials because, they don't look at their own email.
Right.
So now what have you just done? Right? I mean, we don't stop to think sometimes around the full risk that we have implemented within our organizations, I think. And that, again, this entire thing's going to come right back around to risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I like about what I'm seeing here, though, is the priority that they're finally putting on privacy concerns in handling people's data. This has been a much larger concern in Europe to date than it has been here. I don't remember what the current count is, but, we still only have, maybe a few dozen states with privacy laws.
That's kind of an interesting spin, but I don't think so. I think most states have some type of, well, I guess when you say privacy law, you're actually looking for folks that have defined the data that falls into privacy.
Yeah,
And
I'm talking about a more formal. Yeah.
not necessarily from an overall, there's been an actual breach of
Right.
data. So again, breach is a 4-letter word unless you're authorized to use it by your attorney. But it confirmed data exfiltration from your organization of somebody else's personally identifiable information or personal health information, right? Just about every state has a breach notification requirement today. But you're right, not everybody has a privacy law per se, much like California.
Right.
CCPA.
Yeah, and I know it's growing because I keep seeing them get added to the list, so it's coming. Um, and this, I'm going off topic here, so forgive me. Is there any national privacy law on the horizon that you know of?
I think the federal government's been very hands off when it comes to that, right? Because again, how do you clearly define it? And there's so many other things to tackle today from an overall privacy perspective. The reason the states went about doing it, and it first started here with California, the reason the states started doing it is because the federal government is so slow. Nothing against them. Honestly, they've got a lot of stuff on their plate, but really it's they've got a lot of other things that they have had to focus on over the past 10, 15 years. Economies, we've had other almost potential conflicts getting involved. And anyway, trying to get both sides to agree. And I realize there's more than two sides, but the majority on the two sides, trying to get them to agree to something is just like, forget about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I was just looking to see if I could answer Craig Willard's question about what was the question asked to get this data.
So down at the very bottom of the report, So if you scroll down, there's actually an appendix
Nope.
which lists everything that you're looking for with respect to that. And I apologize. I was going to answer your question, but I didn't.
There we go.
Sorry.
No, it's
It's
okay.
down.
Yeah, I just didn't. Somewhere.
Keep going. There's a lot to this report, by the way. There you go, the appendix.
I'm just holding the button down now.
So if you scroll up, you'll actually see the questions that were asked, I think. And if not, I can find that question out. If it's not in there, I'll get it.
I would have thought it was under methodology.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
I thought they usually put it down in the appendix. I don't know why it wasn't
Okay, well,
broken down. Anyway, apologies.
sorry about that, everybody. You get to watch me scroll back up again. All right. So this one is about changes in the past year, and you know, and there's a high degree here of, you know, focus on higher priority on determining proper response to incidents. Is that being driven because more people are getting in trouble for how they're responding to incidents? Does that have any factor here?
So I was at MSSP Alert Live, right, a few weeks ago, and Rob Chaffee, very good friend of ours, right, who was caught up in that July 2nd incident. You know, one of the things he mentioned while he was on stage is a plan is only as good until you get, or it's only good until you get punched in the face. So, you know, while everybody is focusing on creating a higher priority around the proper response, most still do not have a plan, just any type of plan. And the interesting part of the conversation, and in talking with Rob afterward, who, by the way, it took him over 3 months to finally come out on the other side after all of this stuff with July 2nd. He didn't have a plan. He wished he did. But what he said was, looking back over things, I only needed to document those things that are static across all different types of incidents. Figuring out what I'm going to do because I don't know is almost impossible, because it's
Right.
never like you're going to envision it in theory until it smacks you in the face. And so I would, it's kind of interesting that the higher priority is determining proper response, because you don't know how you're going to respond until you're actually in it.
Right, because chances are the only reason they got in was because they did something you didn't expect.
Right. Oh, regardless, though, how bad it really is, or how much you finally uncover because containment is, well, detection is first and foremost, right? When we hit boom, detection is key. Then we start moving to right a boom, and then you have to worry about containment, right? Forget about responding. You have to first contain. And I would be willing to bet that most of the audience doesn't even have proper containment procedures, because it's not listed that way in their incident response plan.
So what you're
Right?
saying is, by prioritizing response, we're skipping over a few steps.
We are. I absolutely, right? Or we can be skipping over a few steps if we have not accounted for that in our plan, or, as Rob would say, planning, right? Because it's always an ongoing,
Right.
it's never a stop. We're always learning, to the point of this first item here, right? Proper response to incidents. Well, the ransomware attack today might be different than the ransomware attack tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. That was the first and foremost.
Yeah, and then if I shift down to the bottom of this, and it goes shift to proactive assessment and evaluation measures. This kind of goes back to the whole risk thing again. Like, risk should be the first priority. Therefore, the proactive assessment and evaluation of that risk should come first.
It's funny you bring up proactivity, right? Because I think in a lot of cases, this industry has been extremely reactive and they don't know how to become more proactive. And the if we could focus them on looking at their risk today and minimizing impact, because we're not going to be able to take impact fully off the table.
Right.
There's just no way, right? Likelihood will always be there, but the only control that our solution provider friends have is to minimize that impact. And the only way you can do that is by assessing the risk and then making a plan on how to best protect yourself from that risk to minimize the impact, because you're not going to be able to reduce it completely.
Yep. And that's where that plan comes into place, and making sure that, you are planning for as much as you can to reduce that impact.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the one thing Rob kept saying over and over again is, I wish I wasn't just going around in circles. If I had a plan that could tell me how to get from here to there in the shortest possible time frame, that would have been better than the mess I was caught up in on for the first 2 weeks. He said 3 weeks during the July 2nd incident. Wow, can you imagine 3 weeks of doing this?
Yeah.
Without I can't even believe that.
Yeah, I mean, not having some kind of roadmap, at least at a high level, right? Because we can't see the details yet, because we won't know what the details are until the event happens.
Correct.
But we can at least have an overall view of a plan of attack, even if you don't know where the enemy is.
Yeah, at least how to contain it to one particular system, if you can, luckily, right? But if it does get out from there, I mean, how to avoid it spreading downstream to all your clients, like you had mentioned, Because here was the other interesting thing that he mentioned at MSSP Alert Live, and if you've heard Rob speak, he actually talks about the loss of almost 25% of his top line revenue. Top line, not bottom line. Top line, which that's
it's devastating.
Anyway, it's horrible. I mean, smaller organizations just cannot come back from that. And large organizations like Rob's, I mean, that was what I was talking to somebody else about it. That's 2 technician salaries. It's like, what the? Who can afford to lose 2 people today?
Well, and especially in a circumstance like that, right? Where you have people working overtime. So now, not only is your top line revenue going down, but your expenses are going up to have to deal with something like this, both on the client side as well as the MSP side.
Yeah. And most businesses today and I'm not even just talking the MSPs today, most businesses, including the clients, do not have enough cash flow reserves to be able to survive going through one of these things.
Yep. And, it's interesting. We're starting to talk about employees here. And if you look at these 7 mitigation steps, a lot of these have to do with people. Technical staff working overtime, technical staff diverted from routine, employee discipline or removal, business staff prevented from workflow. A lot of this is around people. And if you have a plan, make sure you include the people. It's not just about the processes, right?
Well, that's the 3 pillars are in order for a reason, right? People, process, and then last, technology. Mm-hmm. And if you remember that, you will do very, very well.
Now, I assume that this is how they feel about how, basically it says in this It says CompTIA's approach is to ask respondents to gauge the impact of incidents, which normalizes across company size. A $1 million mitigation may be a severe impact for a small firm, but a low impact for a giant company. So respondents are asked to describe the steps taken. And if I'm looking at this chart, it tells me that they're taking it somewhat seriously with a 43%, 65% if you combine severe and moderate. But then you've got 33% none and low. Have these people just not been reading the news or what?
Or maybe they're in the camp that I'm too small for anybody to notice, right? Or it'll never happen. We've got a firewall, we've got EDR. Our MSP tells us we're okay. We'll be okay.
Yeah, but our experience is different, right?
Really
before I left being an MSP, all of my customers were small to medium-sized businesses, and we had, in that last year before I sold, 3 or 4 clients get ransomed, and they were a 3-client law firm or a 3-partner law firm, a print shop, and a church are the 3 that I can remember. And they definitely did not think that they were going to be targets.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I was just talking to one of our freelance content writers earlier today, because anyway, that seems to be my life as of late, going around the country and talking about risk, and then talking to folks about how MSPs can better protect themselves. But the thing folks need to keep in mind, and I just lost my train of thought. Why did I lose my train of thought, Eric?
Well, it's because it happens to me too.
No, I know. Trust me. It's been I've been traveling for the last 6 weeks. It seems. What was? Give me your question again. Or your statement.
We were talking about how a good number of them, 65%, are taking this somewhat seriously. The other 33% are not. And you were talking about how perhaps it was because they think it's not me. And we were talking about the smaller businesses taking the approach of I'm too small to be attacked.
Oh, I remember now. Thank you. That's because most businesses don't realize they're nothing more than a street number on the information superhighway. Right? I mean, your entire audience can relate to the fact that everybody has a numeric IP address, publicly accessible. And it's not until they're able to make that drive-by to see that the front door is wide open, or they left the window open, or the back window open, or the garage door in some cases, that they, once they get inside, then they're able to see all of the valuables inside of the house, right?
Yeah.
And they don't know that it's John Smith ABC company who makes widgets for the US military until after they get in and they start doing some snooping around and find all the data related to John Smith's ABC company that makes widgets for the US military. And oh, by the way, the plans are inside of the server, and here we go. Right?
I mean, it's very similar to about a year ago, we had, somebody came around the neighborhood and broke into cars, my truck included, and took whatever they could find. Now, did they actually break into the cars? No. They just went to the ones that were unlocked, opened them up, and took what they could.
So are you saying that you left your car unlocked?
I'm not saying I left my car unlocked. I'm saying that other people drive my truck that may have left my truck unlocked.
Nice.
But I did get them on the Ring camera, so I was able to hand that footage over to the authorities.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
To help mitigate.
Right, to help at least try to recover some of your stuff and probably some of your neighbor's stuff too.
Yeah. The $5 and change that I had in the glove box.
Yeah.
So Henry's got some things that we might as well go ahead and address here.
All right, fine. Because he wasn't trying to set me up.
Oh, Henry never. Um, so let's see. Let me go ahead and put these up here. So Henry's asking, right now it feels like a lot of existing and proposed legislation seems to be driven by cyber insurance. Um, and then the continuation of that is, what can we do as a community to improve our interaction, direction, and or otherwise get a seat at the table for any potential legislation, state or federal, as it relates to cybersecurity?
Yeah, actually, it's an excellent question, and one Henry and I have actually talked about. And interesting, I would never. And interestingly enough, right now, the only federal legislation that is geared toward what would be solution providers watching your show is really on the cyber incident reporting. As the other legislation that I believe he's referring to is all the way down at the state level. And a lot of the different states have, you know, um, laws not only to, some have been good, some have not been so good. The good ones created like a safe harbor act for MSPs to kind of shield, right? So if the clients are refusing to listen to the provider, at least then they can't get sued in state court for the client. But then there's the flip to that, where there are other states that have passed legislation that hold the MSP accountable for providing vulnerable software to clients who end up getting popped, and allow the clients then to sue the MSP, even though the MSP has nothing to do with it, right?
Yeah.
So, but how do we get a seat at the table? And
Yeah.
and that's really the $10,000 question, quite honestly. I mean, because one of the things I've been focused on since coming here, actually before coming here, was how can we come up with a way for the industry? And I'm not going to say self-regulation is the way to go, but it seems like the easiest path to solve for a lot of the challenges that we have around the globe. By the way, this isn't just unique to the U.S. The governments truly have, in my opinion, not CompTIA's opinion, my opinion, no, they don't have enough experience to be able to make the policy and legislative decisions to mandate what an industry should or should not do. How's that? And if we could collectively, as an industry, figure out how we could regulate ourselves. So those folks that are, I know it's a derogatory term, and I apologize up front, but I've heard it from a lot of the different folks, trunk slammers, right? How can we hold folks accountable inside of the industry to a set of standards that says, I meet this, and if you don't, then you cannot be me? Because what Henry's getting at is actually something I talk a lot about, and that is reputational risk across the industry. So an MSP that gets popped in the UK or Australia or the US or Canada at a level where it hits mainstream media impacts every single MSP around the globe. Right?
Yep.
So even those folks that are finding themselves or calling themselves MSPs, and maybe they are truly MSPs, if they get popped and they're not doing the right thing, then should they be part of this industry? I don't know. But that's up to the industry to decide,
Yeah. So,
right?
and I think the comments that we haven't gotten to yet are kind of driving us towards a direction here, because Henry is saying, soothsayer time. What does the best in class cybersecurity focused MSP look like in the future? Where does Trustmark fall into that? And if people aren't familiar, give us the 30-second pitch for what Trustmark is.
So Trustmark is designed to be an industry accepted best practices set built upon frameworks, global frameworks around the world, a baseline, not even it's not even truly a foundational set yet. It will eventually become one, I hope. Set of security safeguards that every solution provider needs to have implemented, right? Now that doesn't mean that it's static. What it means is the bar is set here, and once we get critical adoption and we can start moving that bar up to where it needs to be, we will continue to increase the level of safeguards to meet the needs of this very complex, unique industry we call a solution provider, a managed service provider, managed security service provider, and now even technology service provider, right? But it's more than just the MSP, MSSP, TSP. We still have to get the vendors focused on some of this stuff, which CISA is working on with Secure by Default, Secure by Design. Leaps and bounds. They just made leaps and bounds progress with that. By the way, I may sit on that team at CISA, and then the end client, because we can't forget about the end clients. They need some level of understanding what minimum baseline they need to be at as well, right? And I'm not saying it's the trust mark. Look, truth be told, I just did webinar 4 for small medium businesses. I'm actually on the IT sector coordinating council, small medium business working group. And in conjunction with CISA, we did a 4-part webinar series for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, all around SMBs, to help them better understand the cybersecurity performance goals, right? Which CISA says is the minimum baseline, absolute minimum, right? And tomorrow, this isn't a plug for it, but if you want to listen in, it's going to be a really interesting conversation. Tomorrow is webinar 4. And we will talk about implementation efforts around how to properly implement the CPGs for any small business.
Now, Wayne, I would assume that the previous 3 plus the one tomorrow are going to be available as recordings?
No. CISA, no, because CISA, it's interesting, right? The first one was actually a threat briefing. So if you missed the first one, it was unfortunate because they actually, CISA, Intel, and ITISAC actually did a threat briefing for the small, medium business community, which was actually pretty cool. 2 was on regulations, statutes, and legislation that might be forthcoming. Which CISA didn't really play too much in, simply because they're not a regulatory body. But they ended up putting the session together for us, and then that was actually a panel. Last week's episode was what are the CPGs, and then I'm moderating the panel tomorrow on how to implement the CPGs.
So if somebody were to want to get that information, without being able to watch the webinars, then is there a resource that they can go to?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you can go out to CISA.gov. As a matter of fact, I would encourage every single individual that's watching your podcast, if you're here in the US, you actually have a regional CISA department. And I would strongly recommend that you reach out to them, because they can help with a number of different things inside of not only your business, but also for your clients too. They can come and talk at, if you put together a session at like your local chamber of commerce, you can, if you, enough advance notice, they can actually come and speak and talk to your entire community. So Henry, you asked what can we do as a community? As a broader community, you can actually have CISA come and talk to all of your clients and talk to them about cyber and why it matters. So it doesn't have to be the MSPs doing it themselves. You can actually get government to actually help you.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking one of the things that if I were an MSP still I'd want to do, though, is I'd want to make sure that in advance of doing something like that, that I made sure that I was up to par with what they're going to talk about, and that my offerings, my stack, is on par in alignment with whatever those CISA experts are going to share.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, honestly, that's why the trust mark that the members put together, and I had some direction and guidance around, guys, you need to, and gals, you need to be thinking about, don't look at the MSPs that are easily able to implement some of these things. Look at some of those, which is the majority. Look at the other folks that are going to struggle with some of this, right? And think about them and how are we going to be able to help them be successful? Because that's what this is all about, right? This isn't about just putting up a blocker and saying, nope, sorry, you're too small, you can't play. Oh, nay, nay. Right? I want the me, myself, and I's to contribute just as much, right? Because we're all in this together as a community.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say in addition to this, Eric, is you have an opportunity as an MSP to actually put your own mask on first. That's to give you the idea and experience in knowing that you're protected, and then you can help others. So there isn't a person on this webinar right now that would say, I'm going to put my child's mask on before I put mine on, right? I need to make sure I'm okay so I can take care of the rest of my family. And it's no different when we're talking about business and we're talking about going through a security incident or a business disruption or a natural disaster. I mean, let's just be honest, right? This isn't just about cyber here.
And that's one of the things I like about Trustmark. And by the way, a lot of the other things that CompTIA is doing, because they do get a group, they get the community together to talk about these things, to debate these things, and come up with what we think the best solutions are for everybody. We did that recently with a non-cybersecurity related project that we worked on as the MSP committee. And, it's that community aspect that I think we really need to engage with. And if more people were to engage, we'd get even more input and get a wider view of everything that's going on out there. Because, a small handful of people can't bring all of the information to the table.
No.
So the more the merrier.
Experience, right? We all have experience. I don't care if you've never implemented any cybersecurity controls, tools, anything ever. You still have experience that you can share and contribute into the broader audience, right? And because you may have a business risk we didn't think about.
Right.
And you may have figured out a way to solve for that without having to implement a tool or a product application, right? Which would be huge for this industry. Where they're not having to spend the 3 T's, right? The time, talent, or treasure in order to get things implemented. Wow, how cool would that be?
Yeah. And that just comes down to the fact that all of our clients look different.
Right.
They may be in the same vertical, but their requirements, their environments, there's a lot of things that make them different, which makes every solution provider's experience unique, like you were talking about.
And they all have a different layer of risk appetite, which is even more problematic, I think, sometimes when we try to have technology-based conversations with our clients instead of trying to find that common ground and look at their pain points and assess their business risk and how we can help them achieve their business goals and objectives. It's a wickedly different conversation, quite honestly. Right. And if we can get the industry to start focusing more on that, I think this industry would grow and thrive, quite honestly.
Yeah. Well, I think there is an underlying shift that people who are as old as I am have seen this industry go through, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it. When I started out in this business, computers were not on everybody's desks. They were a nice to have, not a have to have. And so we've transitioned from technology being a cool new thing that you needed a computer guy, to take care of, to something that if it's down for 15 minutes has material impact on the business. It's a different conversation, just like you were talking about. It is a business conversation today, whereas it was strictly a technology conversation 20 years ago.
Right. I mean, because
And
let's be honest, today your clients do not give a royal rat's patootie about the technology. And I just said this to somebody else at the TAG conference, by the way. It was so funny. I'm like, you're going to swap that technology out in 2 to 3 years. So why would you even bother having a technology conference or conversation with them? Why?
right.
The only thing they're going to say to you is, I just bought a firewall 2 years ago. Why am I having to buy another firewall today? Right?
Yeah. Because the risk has changed and the old one doesn't mitigate that risk.
Ah,
So we're back. We're going to finish where we started,
all
which
right.
was with risk. Because I try and end these a little bit early to make sure everybody has a chance to take a little bit of a break before they go watch Uncle Marv's podcast. So Wayne, any last words?
Honestly, my team and I, we're here to help. I mean, I would hope everybody on this call, and if you don't know, that's our sole mission in life, right? We make no money off of. we're not a revenue generating organization. That's the product side of CompTIA that everybody knows us for, and that's the certifications, right? Everything else is not for profit. So it's actually a really fun time. I'm enjoying life. If you have any questions, I'm an open book. Eric knows how to get a hold of me. Degley knows how to get a hold of me. If that's Chris Edge, that I think is Chris Edge, Chris knows how to get a hold of me. Henry knows how to get a hold of me. Just reach out. We're just happy to have a conversation. If nothing else, I can give you a different perspective. Right. Yep. So, and sometimes that's what we need.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for being here tonight. I know you're taking time out from family and stuff and being home finally to do this. So I really do appreciate that. And I know that the listeners, the watchers appreciate it as well. Where are we going to see you next on the road?
I am going to be at Channel Pro Defend in City of Industry next week. So I will be out there. I just got back from Nashville. My wife, because otherwise it would have been 4 weekends without her. She opted to go with me. We had another reason for going to, because our youngest wanting to go into transactional healthcare law, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, City of Industry, Channel Pro Defend. Then I will be going to IT Nation Connect. I will be there. Actually, I have a session there. I have a session at Channel Pro, and then to New York City for a wonderful briefing, which should be interesting given the location. And then our year-end planning meeting in New Orleans. So awesome.
Well, I will definitely see you at year-end planning.
Okay. I look forward to it.
Well, hold on for a second in the green room, and I'll come back to you after I close this out.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much again for joining us tonight. I hope you got something out of that conversation. One of the themes that I've seen over the last couple of episodes of this is the transition from a technology conversation to a business conversation, especially when we're talking about risk. So make sure that when you're talking to clients, you're talking about their business, not about their network. Okay. Now, you guys, after this show ends, obviously you can go check out Uncle Marv's IT Business Podcast every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can do that, and we will see you in the next one. And next week, I believe, next week I have Sean Lardo from ConnectWise leading up to IT Nation, kind of giving you a preview of what is going to happen there. Should be an interesting show. Check it out. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching All Things MSP Live. Join the All Things MSP Facebook group or follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. The All Things MSP livestream is a BizPal LLC production. Thank you to our vendor partners, Channel Program, Choice Cyber Solutions, Kamanja, Marketopia, MSP Hire, MoveBot, Shield Cyber, Traceless, and Zen Contract.